They buried her for sins she never committed, but the earth refused to keep her. The dirt fell heavy on the wooden lid, each shovelful a prayer muttered by men who feared her more in silence than they ever feared God in daylight. Margot Blackwood was 19 years old when they condemned her, not for murder, not for theft, for existing too beautifully in a village that mistook intelligence for witchcraft and independence for heresy. She had healed a child with fever, few, and honey. She had predicted the frost that killed the harvest by reading the behavior of birds. She had refused the magistrate's son when he tried to claim her in the barn. That was enough. The trial lasted 4 hours. The sentence was immediate. Burial alive in consecrated ground, a punishment reserved for those the church deemed too dangerous to burn, lest their ashes curse the wind. They dragged her to the clearing at dusk, her wrists bound with iron that burned her skin, though she was no demon. She did not scream. She did not beg. She watched the faces of her neighbors, the baker who had kissed her hand at harvest festivals, the midwife who had taught her which herbs stopped bleeding, the children who had once laughed at her stories, and she memorized their cowardice. "You will answer for this," she whispered as they lowered the pine box into the grave. "Not to me, to something older." The magistrate crossed himself. The priest murmured Latin phrases he did not understand. The villagers threw dirt until the hole was filled, until the screaming stopped, until the only sound was the wind through the yew trees that had watched 1,000 burials and would watch 1,000 more. But Margot did not die, not immediately. The air in the coffin was thick and hot, tasting of splinters and her own terror. She clawed at the wood until her fingernails cracked and bled. She screamed until her throat was raw. She prayed to a God who had abandoned her to men who wore his name like armor. Hours passed, or days. Time dissolved into suffocating darkness. And then she felt it, a vibration in the earth above her, not the random settling of soil. Something deliberate, something digging. The coffin lid splintered with a sound like thunder. Dirt cascaded onto her face, into her mouth, choking her, and then hands. Cold hands, strong hands, hands that lifted her from the grave as if she weighed nothing at all. Margot gasped, inhaling night air so sweet it burned. She opened her eyes and saw him. He knelt beside the ruined grave, his form illuminated by a moon so full it seemed close enough to touch. His face was ageless, neither young nor old, carved from marble and moonlight. His eyes were black, entirely black, reflecting nothing but absorbing everything. His clothes were dark and fine, belonging to no century she recognized. "Breathe," he said. His voice was low, accented with something ancient. "You are not dead yet." Margot's chest heaved. Her hands were still bleeding. Her dress was torn and filthy. She looked at the open grave, at the shattered coffin, at the impossible man who had unearthed her. "What are you?" she whispered. He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "I am what your village fears more than witches. I am what waits in the spaces between their prayers." "A demon, no." He stood, offering his hand. "Something older, something that remembers when your God was young." Margot did not take his hand. "Why? Why did I save you?" "Yes." He smiled, and it was not cruel. It was sad, infinitely sad. "Because I heard you. Beneath 6 feet of earth and wood and hatred, I heard you refuse to die. I have walked this world for 700 years, and I have never heard a heartbeat quite like yours, furious and unbroken, even as the dirt filled your lungs." Margot looked at her hands, at the blood and soil, at the village lights in the distance, warm and safe and full of monsters in human skin. "They will come for me again," she said. "Yes." "And you?" The stranger's black eyes gleamed. "I will teach you to bury them instead." He extended his hand again. This time, Margot took it. His skin was cold as winter stone, but his grip was steady. "What is your name?" she asked. "Alexander Corvinus. And you, Margot Blackwood, have just become very difficult to kill." Behind them, the village church bell tolled midnight. The sound carried across the fields like a warning no one would heed. Subscribe if you believe the earth itself can reject injustice, and that some rescues are damnation in disguise. Alexander led her through the forest with the certainty of someone who had walked these paths long before they were paths at all. Margot stumbled behind him, her bare feet bleeding on roots and stones. Her body screamed for rest, for water, for answers. But she did not ask him to stop. Behind them, the village slept in ignorant peace, unaware that the witch they had buried was walking among the living, or something close to it. They reached a structure hidden so deep in the woods that even hunters avoided it. It was not a cottage, not quite a ruin, something between, a stone dwelling half reclaimed by ivy and time, with windows like hollow eyes and a door that opened without sound. Inside, candles ignited at Alexander's presence, not by his hand, by his proximity. The flames bent toward him as if greeting an old master. Margot stopped at the threshold. "What is this place?" "A way station. I have many." He moved through the room, lighting a fire in the hearth with a gesture. "I do not stay anywhere long enough to call it home." "Why?" "Because home is where you are remembered, and I prefer to be forgotten." Margot entered slowly, her eyes adjusting to the golden light. The room was sparse but elegant. Dark wood furniture, shelves of books in languages she did not recognize, a table set with a pewter pitcher and cups. Everything covered in a thin layer of dust except the chair nearest the fire. He had been here recently. Alexander poured water into a cup and offered it to her. She drank greedily, not caring that his eyes never left her face. "You are studying me," she said, wiping her mouth. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you are rare." He sat across from her, his movements fluid and deliberate. "Most humans I have unearthed beg for death by the time I reach them. You were still fighting." Margot set down the cup. Her hands were shaking. "I will not thank you for saving me, only to become your prisoner." "You are not my prisoner. Then what am I?" Alexander leaned forward, his black eyes catching the firelight and revealing flecks of amber buried in the darkness. "You are a choice I have not yet made. Speak plainly." "Very well." He folded his hands. "Your village will hunt you. They will call you demon-touched now, risen from the grave through dark covenant. They will burn you properly this time, with holy oil and prayers that mean nothing but satisfy their guilt." Margot's jaw tightened. "I know. You cannot go back. You cannot go forward as you are. You are a ghost to your old life." "And you offer me what? A new one?" "I offer you eternity." The word hung in the air like smoke. Margot laughed, a bitter sound. "You are mad." "I am ancient. There is a difference." Alexander did not smile. "I am what your legends call vampire. Strigoi, Nosferatu, a dozen names across a dozen languages, all meaning the same, immortal, undying, beyond the reach of time and blade and sickness." Margot stood abruptly, the chair scraping against stone. "You want to turn me into a monster. I want to offer you a choice they never gave you." His voice was calm, relentless. "You can walk out of here. I will not stop you. You will survive perhaps a week before they find you, or you can stay, learn what I am, learn what you could become, and then decide. Decide what? Whether damnation is worse than death." Margot's breath caught. She looked at him, really looked, at the perfect stillness of his chest, the absence of pulse at his throat, the way the firelight seemed to pass through him rather than reflect off him. "How long have you been?" 743 years. I was turned during the siege of Byzantium. I watched empires fall. I walked through plagues that killed millions. I have loved and lost and learned that immortality is the price you pay for refusing to let go. And you are alone. It was not a question. Alexander's expression shifted, something almost human flickering across his features. Yes. Why? Because I will not create another of my kind out of loneliness. I will not curse someone with eternity unless they understand what they are choosing. Margot sat down slowly. Her mind raced. What happens if I say yes? You die, and then you wake. And if I say no, you live as a mortal, hunted, afraid, free to grow old and die as nature intended. She closed her eyes. Behind her lids, she saw the faces of her neighbors throwing dirt on her coffin. She heard the magistrate's son laughing. She felt the splinters under her fingernails as she clawed uselessly at wood. When she opened her eyes, Alexander was watching her with something that might have been hope. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked. "As long as you need." "And if I stay here, with you, what happens?" "You learn. You train. You see what immortality truly costs." He stood, moving to the window where moonlight pooled on the floor. "And when you are ready, you choose, life or eternity, mortality or damnation. I will honor whatever you decide." Margot stood beside him, looking out at the forest, at the darkness that had always frightened her but now felt like the only honest thing left in the world. "Why me?" she whispered. Alexander turned to her, and for the first time he smiled, a real smile, sad and ancient and unbearably lonely. "Because you are the first person in 3 centuries whose heartbeat sounds like defiance instead of fear." Outside, an owl called. Inside, the fire crackled, and Margot Blackwood, witch of nothing and survivor of everything, made her first choice. "I will stay, but not forever, just long enough to understand." Alexander nodded. "That is all I ask." The lessons began at dusk. Alexander did not coddle her. He did not soften the truth. On the first night, he took her to the village boundary and made her watch from the shadows as the magistrate nailed a proclamation to the church door. Reward for information. Regarding the witch Margot Blackwood, escaped from righteous burial, believed to be in covenant with demonic forces, approach with caution. Reward, 50 silver crowns. Margot's hands clenched into fists. They truly believe I clawed out of the grave myself. They need to believe that, otherwise they must face what they did. Alexander's voice was quiet. Guilt transforms easily into hate. It is simpler to hunt a monster than forgive themselves for creating one. I want to burn it down. Yes, I know. He placed a hand on her shoulder and she flinched at the cold. But you are not ready. Rage makes you sloppy, and sloppy gets you killed. Over the following nights, he taught her the skills she would need to survive in a world that wanted her dead. He taught her to move silently through forests, to read tracks in mud and disturbed leaves, to disappear into crowds by becoming forgettable. He taught her which plants could kill and which could heal, which lies to tell and which truths to guard. But most importantly, he taught her about himself. "Silver does nothing," he said, showing her a coin pressed against his palm without effect. "Crosses are symbols, not weapons. Running water does not bind me. These are stories told to comfort humans who fear what they cannot control." "Then what can kill you?" "Fire, decapitation, sunlight." He looked toward the eastern horizon, where dawn would break in hours. "That one is the cruelest. I have not seen a sunrise in 7 centuries. Margot absorbed every word, storing them like weapons. On the 7th night, he took her hunting. Not humans, animals. He taught her to track deer through darkness, to predict their movements, to strike quickly and without hesitation. "If you choose to become what I am," he said, crouched beside her in the underbrush, "you will need blood to survive. Not much, not every day, but regularly. I have learned to take only from animals when possible. And when not possible? His jaw tightened. I take from those who deserve to lose it, rapists, murderers, men who prey on the weak. I do not hunt the innocent. Is that your rule or a universal one? Mine. There are others of my kind who care nothing for morality. They kill as they please. They are the reason the legends exist. Margot studied him in the moonlight. You have rules. You have ethics. You are not a monster. I have killed more people than you can count, Margot. I am exactly a monster. I have simply learned to be a selective one. She wanted to argue, but she had seen him move, faster than sight, stronger than 10 men, silent as snow. She had watched him snap a branch thick as her arm without effort. She knew what he was capable of. Why do you live this way? She asked. Alone, hiding, following rules no one enforces. Alexander stood, brushing dirt from his coat. Because I remember being human, and I refuse to dishonor that memory by becoming the devil they claim I am. They walked back in silence, the forest alive with sounds only he could fully hear. When they reached the stone dwelling, Margot stopped at the threshold. Teach me to fight. Alexander turned. Why? Because if I stay mortal, I need to defend myself. And if I become what you are, I need to know how to survive others like you. A slow smile crossed his face, approval mixed with something darker. Very well, tomorrow night we begin. But Margot had one more question. Alexander, have you ever regretted it, becoming this? He was silent for a long moment, his black eyes reflecting the dying firelight inside. Every single day, and not once. He met her gaze. That is the paradox of eternity. It is the best and worst thing that ever happened to me. And I have had 700 years to decide which matters more. And have you? No. Margot nodded slowly. She understood. Inside, the fire was still burning. Outside, the village slept, dreaming of witches and demons and divine protection. And between those two worlds, a girl who had been buried alive learned the first rule of survival. Trust nothing that claims to save you, especially salvation. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these immortal confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. 3 weeks passed in the space between worlds. Margot grew stronger, faster. Her body shed the softness of her former life, replaced by lean muscle and reflexes honed by nightly training. Alexander was a merciless teacher, knocking her down, forcing her to rise, teaching her that pain was information and fear was a luxury she could not afford. But it was not the combat training that changed her. It was the conversations. They spoke during the hours between midnight and dawn, when the world belonged only to creatures and insomniacs. Alexander told her about Constantinople falling while he watched from rooftops, about Venice during the plague, when he walked empty streets and wept for a humanity he could no longer claim, about a woman in Prague he had loved for 5 mortal years until age took her and left him unchanged. Her name was Eliska, he said one night, staring into the fire. She knew what I was. She chose me anyway, and when she died, she made me promise not to turn her. She said eternity would erase what made her human, and she wanted to die as herself. Did you keep your promise? Yes. I held her while she stopped breathing. Then I walked into the mountains and did not speak for a decade. Margot drew her knees to her chest. Do you still love her? I love the memory of loving her, but the feeling itself has faded. Like a painting left too long in sunlight. That is what time does. It bleaches everything. That sounds like hell, It is. But it is also the only way to survive eternity. If I remembered every loss with fresh intensity, I would have walked into the sun centuries ago. Margot absorbed this. She was beginning to understand the true cost, not the blood or the darkness or even the isolation, but the slow erosion of meaning. The way centuries could turn profound love into distant nostalgia. But she also saw something else. The way Alexander looked at her when he thought she was not watching. The way he smiled when she made him laugh. A rare, genuine expression that transformed his ancient face into something almost young. The way he stood closer than necessary when teaching her to fight, his cold hands steadying her, his voice softer than it needed to be. He was lonely. Not just alone. Lonely. And she was beginning to realize she was too. One night, after training, she sat beside him on the stone steps outside the dwelling. The moon was waning, the forest quiet except for the distant call of wolves. "Alexander," she said, "if I chose to become like you, would you stay?" He went very still. "What do you mean?" "You said you wander, never staying anywhere long. Would you stay if I—" She stopped, suddenly uncertain. "If you became immortal?" He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Margot, I cannot make that decision for you. And I will not let loneliness, mine or yours, be the reason you damn yourself." That is not an answer. It is the only honest one I have. He stood, putting distance between them. "You are 19 years old. You have lived 1/37th of my existence. You do not yet understand what you would be giving up. I understand that I was buried alive by people I trusted. I understand that my old life is ash. I understand that every sunrise brings me closer to a death that terrifies me, not because I fear dying, but because I fear dying without ever truly living." Her voice broke on the last word. Alexander closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were filled with something that might have been pain. "Do you know what I miss most about being human?" he asked quietly. "What?" "The sun. Not because it was warm or beautiful, but because I knew it would always rise. Mortality gives you structure, boundaries, meaning. When you have forever, nothing matters. And when nothing matters—" He trailed off. "Everything becomes gray," Margot finished. "Yes." They stood in silence, two broken things held together by the thinnest thread of connection. "I am not asking you to decide for me," Margot said finally. "I am asking if the decision would matter to you." Alexander looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something he had never done before. He reached out and touched her face. His palm was cold against her cheek, but his touch was gentle. "It would matter more than anything has mattered in a very long time," he whispered. "And that terrifies me. Because if you choose this and regret it, I will have failed the one promise I made to myself 700 years ago, to never create another monster out of love." Margot's breath caught. "Love?" He dropped his hand, stepping back as if burned. "I should not have said that. But you did. Margot, do you love me?" The question hung between them like a blade. Alexander turned away, his shoulders rigid. "I do not know. I have forgotten what love feels like beyond the echo of it. But I know that when I am with you, the gray recedes. I know that when you laugh, I remember why I chose not to walk into the sun. I know that if you died tomorrow, I would mourn you for centuries." Tears burned in Margot's eyes. "Then teach me. Teach me what it means to live forever, and let me decide if that is better than dying as myself. And if you choose mortality, then you will honor it, as you did with Eliska." Alexander turned back to her. In the moonlight, he looked impossibly sad and impossibly beautiful, a creature caught between heaven and hell with no hope of either. "I will teach you everything," he said. "But Margot, If you choose eternity, you must promise me one thing. What? That you will not do it for me. That you will do it because you truly want to see what lies beyond your mortal years. Because if you change for someone else, even me, you will hate them eventually. And I cannot bear the thought of you hating me for 700 years. Margot stepped forward and took his cold hand in both of hers. I promise, she said. But Alexander, you must promise me something too. Anything. If I choose this, you will not leave. Not for a decade, not for a year. You will stay and teach me to survive what I become. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. I promise. Above them, clouds covered the moon, and in the darkness, two impossible beings, one mortal, one not, stood at the edge of a choice that would echo through centuries. Margot made her decision on the 30th night, not about eternity, about revenge. She woke before dusk in the small room Alexander had given her, her mind crystalline and cold. For 30 days she had trained. She had learned. She had grown stronger than any mortal woman should be, and she had done nothing about the men who had put her in the ground. That changed tonight. She dressed in dark clothing, strapped the knife Alexander had given her to her thigh, and slipped out before he woke. Vampires slept deeply during daylight hours, not death, but something close. It would be hours before he realized she was gone. The village looked smaller now, more fragile. Margot moved through the streets like smoke, using the skills he had taught her. She avoided the main roads, kept to shadows, became invisible by becoming unremarkable. Just another hooded figure in the evening crowd. She found the magistrate's son first. Thomas Whitmore, 23 years old, handsome in the way that cruel men often are. He was leaving the tavern, drunk and laughing with friends, boasting about a serving girl he had cornered in the stables. Margot followed him home. He lived in a fine house on the edge of the village, protected by walls and gates that meant nothing to someone who had learned to climb like a spider. She waited on the roof, patient as winter. When the house went dark, she descended. His room smelled of wine and entitlement. He snored in his bed, oblivious. Margot stood over him, knife in hand, and realized something terrible. She wanted to kill him, not for justice, for pleasure. The realization should have horrified her. Instead, it felt like truth. But she did not strike. Instead, she leaned close and whispered, I know what you tried to do to me in the barn. I know what you have done to others. And I want you to know that the witch you buried is back. And she is patient. And when you least expect it, when you finally feel safe, she will return. And next time, you will not wake. Thomas gasped awake, eyes wild. But Margot was already gone. She repeated this with 3 other men. The magistrate who had condemned her, the priest who had blessed her burial, the blacksmith who had forged the coffin nails. To each she delivered a message. Not death. Fear. Because fear, she had learned, was a slower poison than any blade. By the time she returned to the stone dwelling, Alexander was waiting outside, his expression unreadable. You went without me, he said. Yes. You could have been killed. But I was not. He studied her in the moonlight, and Margot knew he could see the change, the way violence had awakened something dark and eager inside her. What did you do? He asked quietly. I taught them that monsters are not born, they are created, and they are patient. Alexander moved closer, his black eyes searching hers. Did you kill anyone? No. Why not? Margot smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Because death is mercy, and I am not feeling merciful. For a long moment, Alexander said nothing. Then he nodded slowly, something like pride flickering across his features. You are learning. I am becoming. Yes. He tilted his head. And what are you becoming, Margot Blackwood? She met his gaze without flinching. Something that chooses its own damnation. not one forced upon me by cowards who fear female power." Alexander smiled, a real smile, sharp and approving. "Then perhaps," he said softly, "you are ready to hear the truth about what immortality truly costs. I know the costs: blood, sunlight, eternity watching everything you love turn to dust." "No." He stepped closer, and Margot felt the cold radiating from him like winter wind. "Those are inconveniences. The true cost is this: you will become efficient at survival. You will learn to care less with each passing decade. Because caring is suffering multiplied by time. You will watch humanity repeat the same mistakes across centuries and lose faith that anything matters. And eventually, you will have to choose compassion or sanity, because you cannot hold both forever." "And which did you choose?" "I chose compassion, and it has driven me half mad." Margot reached up and touched his face, her warm hand against his cold skin. "Then perhaps you need someone to share the madness." Alexander closed his eyes, leaning into her touch like a man starving for contact. "Margot, if I turn you and you come to hate what you become, I will not be able to undo it. There is no cure, no return. You will be this forever." "I know. And you still want it?" She hesitated, not because she was uncertain, but because the weight of the decision deserved acknowledgement. "I want to see what I can become when I am not afraid," she said finally. "I want to watch the world change. I want to learn everything you know. And yes, I want to stay with you, not because I need you, but because I choose you." Alexander opened his eyes, and they were filled with something vast and ancient and unbearably human. "Then I will give you one more night to be certain," he said. "One more night to feel the sun on your skin, to taste food that has flavor, to sleep as humans sleep. And tomorrow, if you still choose this, I will honor your decision." Margot nodded. "And after? When I am like you?" "After. We hunt the monsters who deserve it. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We walk through centuries together and try to remember why any of it matters. And if we forget?" Alexander pulled her close, his arms cold but strong, his voice a whisper against her hair. "Then we remind each other, for as long as forever lasts." Above them, stars wheeled through an endless sky, and somewhere in the village, 4 men lay awake, terrified of shadows that now wore a woman's face. Revenge, Margot had learned, did not require fangs, but immortality would make it so much more satisfying. The last day of Margot's mortality began with sunrise. Alexander had gone to ground in the hidden chamber beneath the dwelling, sealed away from the light that would destroy him. He had kissed her forehead before descending, his lips cold as marble, and whispered, "See the sun for both of us." So she did. Margot climbed to the highest hill outside the forest and watched dawn break over the world she was about to leave behind. The sky transformed from black to violet, to rose to gold, and she understood for the first time what Alexander had lost. Not just light, hope, because sunrise promised new beginnings, and when you lived forever, nothing was ever truly new again. She spent the day walking through memories. She visited the cottage where she had lived with her mother before fever took her. The building was abandoned now, windows broken, garden overgrown. She touched the doorframe where her mother had carved their names and felt nothing. That girl, the one who had believed in kindness and community and God's protection, was dead. Good. She visited the clearing where they had buried her. The grave was still there, disturbed earth and broken coffin wood scattered around the hole. Someone had placed a crude wooden cross at the head with a single word carved into it: damned. Margot laughed. Then she urinated on the cross and walked away. She visited the tavern and bought bread and cheese and wine with the coins Alexander had given her. She ate slowly, tasting everything, knowing these flavors would soon become ash in her mouth. The bread was warm, the cheese was sharp, the wine was bitter and perfect. She would miss this, but not enough to stay. As afternoon bled into evening, she returned to the stone dwelling. Alexander was already awake, standing by the window, watching the last rays of sunlight die. "Did you see it?" he asked without turning. "Yes. And? It was beautiful, and I understand what you have lost." He turned to face her. "And do you still choose this?" Margot set down the cloth bundle she had been carrying, her few possessions wrapped carefully. Everything that remained of Margot Blackwood, village girl, healer, witch. "I choose this," she said, "not because I am running from death, but because I am running towards something greater. Knowledge, power, time to become who I am meant to be." "And me? Am I part of that choice?" She crossed to him, taking his cold hands in her warm ones. "You are the reason I believe eternity might be bearable, but you are not the reason I choose it. I choose it for myself." Alexander exhaled, a sound like relief and grief mixed together. "Then we do this properly," he said. "I will explain exactly what will happen. You will have one final chance to refuse, and if you proceed, I will make it as painless as possible. Tell me." He led her to the center of the room where candles burned in a circle on the floor. The ritual space. Margot felt her heartbeat quicken, the last time it would beat as a fully human organ. "I will feed from you," Alexander said, his voice clinical now, protective. "Not all of your blood, but enough to bring you to the edge of death. You will feel cold, weak, afraid. And then, when you can barely breathe, I will open my wrist and you will drink from me." "How much?" "Enough. Your body will know." He paused. "And then you will die. Your heart will stop. Your lungs will cease. You will be dead for approximately 5 minutes. Do not fight it. Let death take you completely. And then you wake, changed, hungry, immortal." Margot absorbed this. "What will I hunger for?" "Blood. But I will teach you control. I will hunt with you until you learn to manage the need. You will not be a mindless killer. I promise you that. And the sun? You will never see it again. Not directly. Daylight will burn you like acid. You will sleep when humans wake and wake when they sleep. And aging? Stopped. You will be 19 forever. Your body will heal from almost any wound. You will not sicken. You will not tire. You will be stronger, faster, sharper than any human. But you will also be other, separate, forever watching a species you can never truly belong to again." Margot nodded slowly. She had known all of this, but hearing it stated so plainly made it real. "I am ready," she said. Alexander's expression cracked. "Margot, are you certain?" "Yes, because once this begins, I cannot stop it. I know." He reached up and cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "You are the bravest creature I have ever met, human or otherwise. And you," she said, "are the loneliest. Let me fix that." Alexander smiled, sad and beautiful and ancient. Then he kissed her. His lips were cold. But the kiss was not. It was 700 years of loneliness and longing and hope that perhaps, finally, he had found someone who could walk beside him through eternity without breaking. When they parted, Margot knelt in the circle of candles. "I am ready," she said again. Alexander knelt across from her. His eyes had gone completely black. No whites, no iris, just endless darkness. "Then let us begin," he whispered, "and may whatever gods remain forgive us both." He struck. "If this story has already captured you, leave a like. It helps the voices of those who chose eternity reach more hearts." The pain was exquisite. Alexander's fangs pierced her throat with surgical precision, and Margot gasped as her blood flowed into him. Not all at once, slowly, deliberately. He drank the way a musician plays a difficult passage, with complete focus and terrible beauty. Margot felt her life draining. Her vision dimmed at the edges. Her fingers went numb. The world became distant, muffled, like she was sinking underwater. "Stay with me," Alexander whispered against her skin. "Just a little longer." But staying was impossible. Her body was giving up, shutting down, surrendering to an inevitability as old as existence itself. She was dying, and she was not afraid. When Alexander finally pulled back, Margot collapsed into his arms. Her heart stuttered, a dying engine trying desperately to keep rhythm. Her lungs barely moved. "Now," he said, and opened his wrist with a claw-like fingernail. Black blood welled from the wound, not red, but dark as oil, gleaming like stars. He pressed his wrist to her lips. "Drink, Margot. Drink and wake." She did not want to. Every human instinct screamed against consuming what she was seeing, but survival overrode disgust. Her lips parted. The blood touched her tongue, and everything changed. It tasted like iron and smoke and ancient earth. It burned going down her throat, scorching her from the inside. She felt it spreading through her veins like fire, rewriting her cells, transforming her into something new. Alexander cradled her as she drank, whispering words in a language she did not know. Prayers, perhaps, or apologies. When she had taken enough, he pulled his wrist away. The wound closed instantly. "Now sleep," he said, "and when you wake, you will be reborn." Margot's heart beat one final time, then stopped. Silence. She dreamed of burial, not the grave she had escaped, a different kind. A burial in time itself, watching centuries pass and fast forward, civilizations rising and falling like waves, faces blurring together until she could not remember which era she was from or who she had once been. She dreamed of Alexander walking alone through empty cities, his face unchanging while everything around him crumbled. She dreamed of becoming hollow, a beautiful shell with nothing inside but hunger. And then, light, not sunlight, something else, something that pulled her back from the void. Margot opened her eyes. The world exploded into sensory overload. She could hear everything: Alexander's breathing, unnecessary but habitual, the mice moving in the walls, the wind through trees half a mile away, the heartbeats of deer in the forest, the distant murmur of the village sleeping, unaware that another predator now walked among them. She could smell everything: blood, so much blood, everywhere, pulsing beneath skin, smoke from dying fires, earth and decay, life and death, mixing until they were indistinguishable. She could see everything: colors she had no names for, textures she had never noticed, shadows that held depth and meaning. The candlelight was no longer soft, it was violent, aggressive. "Breathe," Alexander said. "I know it is overwhelming, but breathe." Margot sat up. Her body moved with impossible fluidity, muscles responding before conscious thought. She looked at her hands. They were paler now, almost luminous. Her fingernails had grown slightly, tapered to points. "What am I?" she whispered. Her voice sounded different, deeper, more resonant. "You are Nosferatu," Alexander said. "You are undying. You are forever." Margot stood, and the movement was too fast, too smooth. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall. The stone cracked under her palm. "Easy," Alexander said, moving to her side. "You are stronger now, much stronger. You must learn control." Margot stared at the fractured stone. She had barely touched it. "How strong am I?" "Strong enough to tear a man apart with your bare hands? Strong enough to lift a carriage? Strong enough to break iron?" She looked at him, really looked, and saw him as he truly was for the first time. Not a man, but a creature of impossible beauty and terrible power. His skin was flawless. His eyes were endless. He moved like water. "Is this what I look like now?" Yes. Margot moved to the mirror on the wall, a polished piece of metal that served as reflection. She expected to see nothing. remembering the legends about vampires and mirrors. But she was there, changed. Her face was sharper, her eyes were darker, her lips were red despite having no blood of her own. She looked like herself, but perfected, idealized, made into something both more and less than human. "I am beautiful," she whispered. "You were always beautiful. Now you are dangerous." Margot turned to him. "I feel strange. Not cold, not warm, just still. You are no longer governed by living rhythms. Your heart does not beat. Your blood does not flow. You are preserved in this moment forever." She pressed her hand to her chest. Nothing. No pulse. No movement. Dead. And yet she was more alive than ever. "I am hungry," she said suddenly. Alexander nodded. "I know. The hunger is the hardest part. Come. I will teach you to hunt." But Margot did not move. She was staring at Alexander's throat, at the place where his inhuman blood moved sluggishly through ancient veins. "Not me," he said gently, reading her expression. "I will not satisfy your hunger. You need living blood, human or animal. We will start with animal." Margot blinked, breaking the predatory focus. "I am sorry. I did not mean. Do not apologize for your nature. You are a hunter now. It is what you were made to be." He offered his hand. "Come. Let me show you what you have become." They left the dwelling together, stepping into a night that no longer held darkness. Margot could see everything as clearly as if it were day, every leaf, every shadow, every movement. The forest was alive in ways she had never imagined. She could hear the blood moving through trees, the microscopic vibrations of insects, the breathing of creatures burrowing underground. "It is too much," she gasped. "Too loud, too bright." "You will learn to filter," Alexander said. "Give it time. For now, focus on one sense at a time." He taught her to narrow her perception, to silence the overwhelming flood of information. Slowly, the world became manageable again. Then he taught her to hunt. They tracked a deer, Margot leading, following a scent she could not have named, but recognized instinctively as prey. When they found it, Alexander showed her how to strike, quick, clean, merciful. The blood was ecstasy. Margot drank deeply, feeling strength flood through her, feeling the last remnants of her humanity dissolve. This was what she was now. This was her purpose. When she finished, she looked up at Alexander, her lips stained red. "I do not regret this," she said. "Good," he replied, "because there is no going back." They walked back through the forest together, two immortal things that had once been human, learning to navigate eternity one night at a time. And in the village, church bells tolled for morning prayers. But Margot would never hear them again. The first year was the hardest. Margot learned that immortality did not erase humanity, it amplified it. Every emotion was sharper, every memory more vivid, every loss more devastating, because she knew she would remember it perfectly for centuries. She learned to hunt without killing, to take only what she needed from animals, and when necessary, from humans who would not be missed, bandits, raiders, men who preyed on the weak. Alexander taught her the code he had developed over centuries: never the innocent, never children, never those who are loved. She learned to move through human society as a ghost. They traveled from village to town to city, never staying long enough to be remembered. Margot watched fashions change, languages evolve, borders shift. She watched wars that meant everything to the people fighting them and nothing to her. But she also learned something Alexander had not taught her. She learned to love him, not the desperate, consuming love of her mortal youth, something deeper, something that could only exist between two beings who had all of eternity to understand each other. They shared everything: memories, fears, the weight of existence that grew heavier with each passing year. When Alexander fell into one of his black moods, the depression that came from watching humanity repeat the same mistakes across centuries, Margot pulled him back. When Margot raged against the injustices they could not fix, Alexander reminded her why they tried. They were partners, equals, two broken immortals learning to be whole together. But the world, as always, intruded. On a winter night in their 3rd year together, they encountered another vampire. His name was Lucian, and he was ancient, older than Alexander, older than the Roman Empire. A creature who had forgotten why he had ever cared about human life. They met him in Prague, in a tavern where he was openly feeding from a young woman who clearly did not want his attention. Alexander intervened. "Let her go," he said quietly. Lucian looked up, blood on his lips, and smiled. "Alexander, it has been, what, 3 centuries? 4, and I said, let her go. Since when do you care what I do with my meals? Since always. You know my rules?" Lucian released the woman, who fled into the night. He stood, wiping his mouth, studying Alexander with ancient amusement. "Rules," he said mockingly. "You still pretend to be noble? How tedious." His eyes shifted to Margot. "And who is this? A fledgling? How sweet. Did you tell her what a monster you really are, Alexander? Did you tell her about Constantinople?" Margot stepped forward. "He told me everything, and I chose this anyway." Lucian laughed. "Oh, she has fire. I like that. But child, you have no idea what you have bound yourself to. Alexander is not the gentleman he pretends to be. He is a killer, a creature of darkness. He simply dresses his sins in philosophy." "And you," Margot said coldly, "dress yours in nothing at all." Lucian's smile vanished. "Careful, fledgling. You may be immortal, but you are not indestructible." "Neither are you," Margot replied. The tension in the tavern thickened. Other patrons sensed danger and began quietly leaving. Alexander placed a hand on Margot's shoulder, a warning and a comfort. "We do not want conflict, Lucienne," he said. "Walk away." "Or what? You will fight me? You, who spent 400 years avoiding confrontation?" Lucienne circled them slowly, predatory. "You have grown soft, old friend. Mortality has infected you through this girl." "Humanity," Alexander corrected, "not mortality. There is a difference. Is there?" Lucienne stopped, facing them both. "We are apex predators, Alexander. We are meant to hunt, to feed, to rule. Your pathetic code does not change what we are." "No," Margot said, "but it changes what we choose to be." Lucienne studied her with new interest. "You truly believe that, do you not? You think choice matters in eternity?" He laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Give it a few centuries, child. The weight of time will crush that optimism. And when it does, when you finally understand that nothing matters and no one is worth saving, you will become like me. Or you will walk into the sun. Or," Margot said quietly, "I will prove you wrong." For the first time, something flickered in Lucienne's ancient eyes. Not respect, curiosity. "Perhaps you will," he said, "but I doubt it. The young always believe they will be different. They never are." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Alexander, when she disappoints you, and she will, do not say I did not warn you." He vanished into the night. Alexander exhaled slowly. "That was dangerous. Lucian is one of the oldest. He could have killed us both. But he did not. No, because even he remembers when he cared about something." Alexander looked at her. "You challenged him. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Both, probably." Margot smiled. "But I meant what I said. We can choose to be better than our nature. And if we fail, then we fail together." Alexander pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. I have walked this earth for 7 centuries, Margot. And you in 3 short years have given me more hope than all those centuries combined. Good, she whispered, because I plan to give you 7 centuries more. They left Prague that night, but the encounter with Lucienne changed something fundamental. Margot understood now that they were not alone in the darkness. There were others, some like Alexander, clinging to remnants of humanity, others like Lucian, who had let go of everything except hunger. And she understood that survival meant more than avoiding hunters and sunlight. It meant protecting their souls from the erosion of time itself. So they made a covenant. Standing in a chapel, ruins outside Vienna, beneath stars that had watched empires rise and fall, Alexander and Margot swore oaths to each other. To never kill the innocent. To protect those who cannot protect themselves. To remember their humanity even when it hurts. To pull each other back from darkness when one begins to slip. To stay together for as long as forever lasts, or until one of them chooses the sun. They sealed the covenant in blood, Margot's wrist to Alexander's lips, Alexander's to hers, not feeding, bonding, creating a tie deeper than love, stronger than time. If you ever want to walk into the light, Alexander whispered, tell me first. Let me hold you as you go. Do not leave me to find ashes. The same for you, Margot said. Promise me. If eternity becomes too much, if the weight breaks you, come to me first. Let me try to remind you why you stayed. I promise. They stood together in the ruins, 2 immortals who had chosen each other above all else, and watched the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in the distance, church bells tolled midnight, and Margot realized that eternity was not the curse Lucian claimed it was, not when you had someone to share it with. Present day, somewhere in Eastern Europe. The girl stumbled through the forest, bleeding from a dozen wounds, pursued by men whose cruelty had earned them a particular kind of attention. She did not know she was being hunted by hunters. Margot watched from the trees, invisible in shadow. Beside her, Alexander assessed the situation with the calm of someone who had done this 10,000 times. 4 men, he said quietly, armed, predators. The girl? 16, 17 at most, running from something worse than death. Margot's eyes darkened. Then we give her something better. They moved. The men never saw them coming. One moment they were laughing, anticipating their catch. The next, they were on the ground, disarmed, staring up at 2 figures who should not exist. You have a choice, Alexander said, his voice cold as winter. Leave, now. Never return to this region. Never hunt another innocent. Or, one of the men spat. Margot smiled, showing fangs. Or we show you what real predators look like. The men ran. Margot found the girl collapsed against a tree, sobbing. She approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. You are safe now, she said gently. The girl looked up, terrified. What? What are you? Someone who remembers being afraid. Margot knelt beside her. What is your name? Sophia. Sophia. Those men will not return. You have my word. Margot pulled out a small pouch of coins, more than enough for Sophia to start over somewhere safe. Go to the village west of here. Find the woman named Katya. Tell her Margot sent you. She will help. I do not understand. Why are you helping me? Margot smiled, a real smile, warm despite the centuries. Because once someone helped me when I had nothing, and because the world has enough monsters. It needs more mercy. She helped Sophia to her feet and watched her disappear into the forest, heading towards safety. Alexander appeared beside her. Katya will take her in? Yes, I have been sending her refugees for decades. She never asks questions. And the men? Marked. If they harm anyone else, we will know. Alexander nodded. They had built a network over centuries. Humans who helped them help others, a web of mercy spanning continents. It was not much, but it was something. They walked back through the forest together, hand in hand, moving with the ease of creatures who had perfected the art of existing in darkness. "Do you ever regret it?" Margot asked. The question she asked once per century, like ritual. "Every day," Alexander replied, as always. "And not once." Good answer. They reached a cliff overlooking the valley where dawn was beginning to break, the sun they would never see but could feel approaching like a tide. 743 years, Margot said softly. "We have walked this earth together for 743 years. Give or take a decade," Alexander said, smiling. "Do you remember the night you unearthed me? Every detail. You looked like fury wrapped in dirt and defiance. And you looked like salvation wearing a monster's face." She leaned against him. "I was so afraid, not of dying, of never truly living. And now? Now I have lived more than 10 mortal lifetimes. I have seen empires fall and rise. I have learned 20 languages. I have read 10,000 books. I have saved hundreds of people who will never know my name." She looked up at him. "And I have loved you for 7 centuries. That alone makes immortality worth it." Alexander cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek in a gesture he had repeated 1,000,000 times across the years. "When I pulled you from that grave," he said quietly, "I thought I was saving you. But Margot, you saved me. You gave me purpose when I had forgotten why I stayed. You taught me that eternity does not have to be empty." "We saved each other," Margot corrected. "Yes, we did." The sky was lightening. They could feel the sun's approach, not painful yet, but warning. They turned back toward their refuge, a modern safe house hidden in the mountains, far from curious eyes. As they walked, Margot thought about the girl they had saved tonight. Sophia would live her mortal life, marry perhaps, have children, grow old, die peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by people who loved her. She would never become what Margot was. And that was perfect, because some people were meant to burn brightly and briefly, like candles, and others were meant to be eternal flames, burning quietly in the darkness, guiding the lost home. Margot and Alexander were the latter. They reached their sanctuary just as the first rays of sun touched the mountain peaks. They sealed the door, descending into cool darkness where they could rest. "Another night survived," Alexander said. "Another century to go," Margot replied. "And another after that. And another after that." They lay down together in the darkness, 2 immortal beings who had chosen each other across impossible odds, and closed their eyes. Outside, the sun rose on a world that had forgotten them. But in the shadows, in the spaces between light and dark, they endured. Because some loves are strong enough to survive death, and some choices echo through eternity. The girl was buried alive for witchcraft until the alpha vampire unearthed her at midnight. She chose immortality. He chose not to be alone. Together, they chose mercy. And 700 years later, they are still choosing. Subscribe if you believe love can make even eternity bearable, and that monsters are defined not by what they are, but by what they choose to protect. Comment eternal if you would choose immortality for love that sees your soul and stays anyway. Like if you believe even the damned deserve a second chance and a companion to share the darkness. Every immortal was once someone who chose not to die. But the best immortals are those who choose to remember why living matters.